Hey everybody, it's your boy, the aesthetic artist Malachi McCoy. Thanks for visiting my channel, Malachi Draws. Sit tight, I'm going to show you how to draw. Yes.
I start off with a circle, split that vertically and horizontally, and then I add that jaw line, the chin line in the side of the face. I drop in representation for the neck and the trap muscles, and then at that point, I go ahead and start adding the brow. Upon deciding where the brow is going to be, I then start to place the eyes. Notice that I try to keep the eyes on the same plane and making the eye closer to us a little bit larger and the second one a little smaller because it is moving away from us so that you keep your drawing in perspective. At this point I'm doing nose placement, and although with this character you don't actually see his nose, it's still good to get into the habit of knowing where all of the facial features are. And now I add the sash for Deathstroke's costume on the back. And at this point I start to add a little bit of detail, so you'll notice that I change the grip of how I'm holding the pencil. I don't know if you noticed before, but when I am being a bit more sketchy, I hold the pencil a little bit differently, and what that allows me to do, like I said, is be more sketchy and not be as committed to details, and it forces you, or forces me, to not hold the pencil as hard, and that way when you have to come back and erase, you don't have to press hard on the paper. Now I took that vertical line that we used to split the circle before, brought that all the way down to the chin, because for Deathstroke that actually is part of his mask. At this point I'm starting to erase or get rid of some of my construction lines, and I'm also adding some details for the mask. Now, for those of you who don't know, this design is based on that which is used for Batman Arkham Origins, I believe is the name of the game. And so here you can see me adding some details for the shoulders and the collar and all those things that make this particular design unique. And now that I like the lines that I have, you'll see me darkening them in. And just as a side note, I am actually using a Cool Erase pencil from Prismacolor. I do like these pencils because they allow me to put the lines down, keep them light, and then when I make a mistake I can actually erase them. That's the Cool Erase Prismacolor, and you can get them in a set and they come in a lot of different colors. At this point you can see me using my Copic multi-liner to drop in some border lines, and for my outline I like to use a thicker line, so at this point I actually am using the 0.7 Copic multi-liner. Alright guys, continuing this piece. Now I am using the rest of my Copic liner, or my Copic multi-liner set I should say, and I do apologize, I don't remember exactly what size I'm using here. More than likely it's the 0.3 I'm using to add some detail. You'll notice I've got 3 pens in my hand and I'm kind of switching back and forth between the two. Definitely using the 0.7 here at the bottom of the chin to add some thickness to the jawline. Then I came in with my Faber-Castell brush pen and used the bold to add shadow underneath the chin. And I'm using my 0.7 multi-liner by Copics. Again, excuse me, having trouble saying that today for some reason. But using that to add some thickness to the lines of Deathstroke's costume. Now this is one of those situations where it really was supposed to have been a 5 to 10 minute drawing, and I I was just enjoying myself so much, I kept adding things to it. So now you see I erased one side of the face and decided to, this is where I fully committed to the look from Arkham Origins. Added some shading on the right side of the face with a pencil, a little bit more details with my multi-liner, Copic multi-liner, and then realizing that I missed part of the costume, I came in with my Derwent HB and threw some lines down, and then went on ahead and inked those with my Copic multi-liner, the 0.7 again. At this point, I'm just doing a little bit of rendering, adding a little bit more depth. Decided to give him an eyeball because, hey, how else is Deathstroke supposed to see, right? Some rendering to the mask to make it look a little battle worn. And in preparation for my Copic colors, I went on ahead and got my eraser, my Mars Plastics from eraser from Staedtler, and I cleaned that up, and I used a dry paintbrush to get rid of all those eraser shavings. And then I'm gonna come in here with, I believe it was a warm gray is what I started with. Added some wrinkles around the eyes, rendering with the 0.3 multi-liner. And here I am coming in with warm gray. I apologize, I believe this is number 1 that I started with. Yep. And just kind of dropping it in nice and light, leaving some light spots to show reflection, and then coming in behind that with warm gray number 3. Now I decided to go with the warm grays because the warms, although they are gray, they have just a hint of red in them, and that tricks your eye into seeing red. So the parts that are supposed to be red, I use W1 and W3, and then the parts that are gray, I came in with my neutrals. And so you'll see me switch back and forth from N0 all the way up through N6. So at this point, I'm just going to stop talking for a minute and let you enjoy the process. Alright, so here I am using W3 to bring in some shadow on those red areas. And then after I do that, I actually come back over it with W1 again to help smooth it out and blend those areas together. This is a technique that you can use as well. I'm putting down the light color first and then the darker color of the same family, and then coming back over it again with that lighter base color so that the transition is a bit more smooth. At this point, I tried to use my Uniball white pen to add some rendering, and it did show up okay, but not to the extent that I was looking for. But this is all a learning process, right? Okay, at this point I decide to get my Copic 100, and I grabbed a straight rule in order to lay down my background, and then realized that I hadn't colored in Deadpool's sash on the back of his mask. So here I'm using two different shades of neutral gray and going back and forth between N1 and N3 to add darks and lights of that ribbon. And then I grab the 100 and I start putting in a background, and I use a straight rule to kind of give me a nice edge before I start filling it in. Excuse me. So I'm being very generous here with how much ink I put down, letting it really saturate the paper. And because this paper is only 65 pound weight, I actually put a sheet of scratch paper underneath it so that it wouldn't bleed onto my next page. It did bleed onto the back of the page a little bit, but that's okay. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I initially was not planning to go this far with this picture. Just kind of took on a life of its own, as I'm sure you will attest to in your own art projects. So at this point, I've flipped the page back because I'm testing to see how this next color is going to look, which ended up being N8. And I found that when you do something like this, going from one color into another color, even with the background, it just helps to give your photo a bit more pop. Alright guys, thanks so much for joining, and like and subscribe, and if you have any requests, please feel free to put them below.